Usually, history is presented to us as like a really static timeline of events,
Yeah, totally.
A king is crowned here, a war is fought there, an inventor builds a machine in a workshop. It's basically just a list of things that happen.
Right, a giant textbook of dates.
Exactly. But today, we are doing something totally different. We are taking a deep dive into what is basically a parallel reality.
Ooh, I like that.
It's this very specific, incredibly fascinating framework for viewing the universe, which we are calling the world of Isaac Newton.
And right off the bat, we should probably clarify that we aren't just doing a biography of the guy in a powdered wig.
Right.
The guy who's supposedly had an apple fall on his head. That's the cartoon version of history.
Yeah, the simplified version they teach in grade school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What we are exploring today is an entire operating system for the human mind. This is a complete worldview designed for curious people.
Right, whether you're like 12 years old looking at a spinning top on your desk or a seasoned physicist looking at a galaxy.
It's for anyone who refuses to just accept that things happen by magic. People who actually stop and ask, wait, why did it do that?
It is a world where nature follows absolute rules. And the ultimate adventure, the absolute coolest, most impactful thing you can possibly do with your time is figuring out what those rules are.
And we actually have a conceptual map of this world to guide us today.
We do.
It details exactly what the people who inhabit this mindset believe, how they go about their daily lives, the structural pillars that keep their society functioning, and finally, the massive overarching goal that drives literally everything they do.
It's such a compelling journey because if you can truly internalize the map of this world, you start to see your own everyday reality completely differently.
You really do.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can understand how people act in this Newtonian framework, we have to understand what they actually believe about the universe they live in.
Right, the foundational premise.
Because if you just casually look around our universe, especially on, a busy day or during a massive storm, it looks like pure, unfiltered chaos.
Oh, it really does. And for most of human history, that's exactly how we interpreted it.
Right.
If a drought happened or a plague swept through or a comet appeared in the sky,
It was viewed as capricious.
like it was just out to get us.
Exactly. It was the whim of the gods or fate or just random, terrifying chance.
But the very first non-negotiable belief in the world of Isaac Newton is that the universe is orderly. It is not chaotic.
Everything has a cause.
Yes, everything, no matter how weird or seemingly random, has a mechanical cause.
I was trying to think of how to visualize this shift in thinking. And it's a lot like playing a massive, ridiculously complex video game for the very first time.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. You get dropped into the map, and initially it is totally overwhelming. There are flashing lights, characters moving around unpredictably, weather systems changing from rain to snow, objects exploding.
It looks like total chaos.
Exactly. But the people who adopt this Newtonian mindset, they don't just stare at the flashing lights. They believe deep down in their bones that there is hidden code running everything on that screen.
That's a fantastic analogy. But there is one terrifying difference.
What's that?
In this version of the game, there is no developer manual.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
No one handed humanity the source code. But what's fascinating here is how this belief totally changes your relationship with the unknown.
How so?
Well, think about it. If the universe is truly chaotic, then it's just a dark, terrifying forest where you are basically helpless.
You're just at the mercy of whatever happens.
Exactly. But if you believe that rules are the fundamental language of nature, then the universe transforms. It stops being a haunted house and becomes a giant, beautiful puzzle waiting to be solved.
Right. Because if things happen randomly, you just have to hide and hope for the best. But if there's a cause for everything, you can find it. You can figure out the code.
And in this worldview, what people want more than anything is to understand the mechanics of the world.
They want to predict what the game will do next.
Yes, they want to find the incredibly simple laws that are hiding right behind really complex phenomena.
And extracting that code requires a very specific type of faith, doesn't it?
It does. The core assumption here is that if you observe well enough, the patterns will always reveal themselves. The rules are there.
They aren't hiding to be malicious or deceptive.
Right. They're just waiting for someone to pay close enough attention and, to speak the right language, which in Newton's case meant literally inventing a new branch of mathematics.
Wait, calculus, right.
Yes, calculus.
Mhm.
He had to invent it just to be able to read the code of planetary motion.
That is just mind-blowing, which honestly flows perfectly into the daily grind of living in this world. So if you genuinely believe the universe is a giant solvable puzzle running on hidden mathematical code, how do you actually extract that code without just wildly guessing?
You have to force reality to show its hand.
Force reality.
Yeah. And that requires a ruthless, methodical process. This is where we transition from what they believe to how they actually operate on a daily basis.
Right, the framework outlines a very specific loop of discovery.
Exactly. In this world, people observe carefully before they ever try to explain. They test their ideas against reality without exception, and they build knowledge one tiny, agonizingly verified step at a time.
Okay, I have to pause on one specific aspect of this daily grind, because if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking exactly what I thought when I first read about this process.
Which is,
Wait, the source says they demand you doubt your conclusions even when they make perfect sense.
yeah,
That sounds completely miserable. I mean, if I finish a giant 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and the picture looks exactly like the one on the box, I am not going to take it all apart and measure the cardboard pieces with calipers just to be absolutely sure.
right. Why would you actively doubt an answer that already makes perfect logical sense?
Exactly. It sounds exhausting.
It really does.
Yeah.
But human biology is actually working against you here. It goes entirely against our nature.
What do you mean?
Usually when we find an answer that makes logical sense in our heads, our brain rewards us. We get a little hit of dopamine, we feel smart, and we just want to stop thinking and move on.
Right. Cognitive closure.
Exactly. But in the Newton world, you have to actively resist that biological urge. Why? Because an explanation making sense in your human brain does not mean it is the actual rule governing reality.
Oh, wow. That is a huge distinction.
It's massive.
So just because my theory for why the sky is blue sounds really elegant and logical, that doesn't mean it's the actual physical reason the sky is blue.
Precisely. Reality is the ultimate boss.
Mhm.
Doesn't care if your idea is clever or if it took you 10 years to come up with it.
Reality just is what it is.
Yeah. That radical, almost paranoid doubt is the engine of their entire world. If you don't doubt your own brilliant ideas, you stop looking for your own blind spots. You stop controlling your variables.
And this isn't just a philosophical exercise either. They took this idea, testing against reality without exception, to extreme physical lengths.
Oh, they definitely did.
Like Newton himself. When he was trying to figure out how the human eye perceives light and color, he didn't just sit in an armchair and think about it.
No, we did not.
He took a bodkin, which is like a thick, blunt needle, and he slid it into his own eye socket.
Yeah, between his eye and the bone.
Just pressing on the back of his eyeball to see how the pressure changed the colors he was seeing.
It's so intense.
It's terrifying.
But it perfectly illustrates the mindset, right? He didn't trust his own assumptions about light. He forced reality to give him physical evidence.
Even if it meant jabbing a needle in his eye.
Exactly. Because if an idea doesn't survive contact with the real world, it is discarded. You take the puzzle apart and you start over.
It is really the only way to make sure you aren't just fooling yourself. And this connects directly to how their worldview actually scales and grows over time.
Yeah, there's a real step-by-step cycle to this madness.
Observe carefully, then record accurately, look for patterns, test and refine, and finally, apply universally. It's like a ladder.
And to climb that ladder, this world operates on a brilliant four-word mantra for how tiny insights become world-changing discoveries.
Right. Curiosity, reason, proof, repeat.
Curiosity to look at something mundane. Reason to hypothesize what's happening. Proof to ruthlessly test if you are right.
And then repeat the whole thing. It is literally a machine for generating truth.
It really is. But a machine that powerful needs incredibly strong guardrails.
What kind of guardrails?
Well, it needs absolute foundational laws that govern this entire society of discoverers. Otherwise, the machine shakes itself apart through bias or ego.
Which brings us to the structural pillars that keep this reality working.
Exactly.
And the first pillar is arguably the most disruptive idea in human history.
Oh, without a doubt.
Evidence is stronger than authority.
If we look at the historical context, this is a massively revolutionary concept.
Because before this,
Right. For thousands of years, if the king or the church or, the oldest philosopher in the room like Aristotle said, the universe works like this, that was the end of the debate.
authority was truth.
Exactly. The prevailing thought was that the ancients knew best, and we were basically just trying to remember what they already knew.
But in the Newton world, authority means absolutely nothing without proof. The Royal Society, which was founded around this Newtonian mindset, literally took the motto nullius in verba.
Which translates to take nobody's word for it.
Yes. So, if an emperor declares that the moon is made of smooth, pristine crystal, but a 12-year-old kid with a telescope has visual evidence that it is covered in jagged craters, the kid wins.
The evidence wins every time.
The universe doesn't care how fancy your title is or how many degrees you have. The rules are the rules.
Which perfectly sets up the next two pillars of this world. Calculations must be consistent, and the same rules apply everywhere, all the time.
This one is huge because before this worldview took over, people genuinely believed that the heavens, the stars, the moon, the planets, operated on a completely different divine set of rules than the dirty, imperfect Earth.
Right. The Earth was messy. The heavens were perfect.
Exactly. But the Newtonian framework shattered that. If you drop a rock in London, it falls. If you drop a rock in Tokyo, it falls. The rules don't take a day off.
They are completely consistent.
But more importantly, the exact same force pulling that rock to the dirt in London is the exact same force tethering the moon to the Earth.
That is the mind-bending realization. Unifying the heavens and the earth under one consistent mathematical law. The rules really do apply everywhere.
Okay, but then, right after establishing all these strict, rigorous clipboards, measuring tapes, math, peer review, we hit a concept that feels totally out of left field.
It really does.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The framework introduces this idea. Beauty is a sign of truth.
It's such a jarring shift in tone.
Yeah.
It feels like a concept that belongs in an art class or a poetry class, not a physics lab.
Exactly. But it made me really think about what kind of beauty they mean in a mechanical universe. It's not pretty, like a nice watercolor painting of a sunset.
No, not at all.
Imagine you see a perfectly executed skateboard trick. The skater goes up the ramp, flips the board, catches it right at the peak of the arc, and lands without a sound. It's beautiful, right?
Right.
But it is beautiful because it is brilliantly simple and efficient. There is no wasted motion. The physics are perfectly balanced.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that's a great visual. But let's take it even further and look at it like file compression in computing.
File compression, okay.
Imagine taking the chaotic, swirling, incredibly complex movements of billions of stars, planets, and moons over millions of years, and compressing all of that overwhelming data into one tiny, elegant equation.
Oh, like force equals mass times acceleration. F equals ma.
Exactly. In the Newtonian framework, beauty means absolute elegance and simplicity.
So it's about not being messy.
Right. If you come up with a rule to explain how planets move, and your rule requires 50 different exceptions, complicated looping math, and it only works half the time, it is ugly.
It's a massive, uncompressed file that just crashes your computer.
Precisely. It's messy, which means it is probably wrong.
No.
The idea here is that nature prefers the perfectly compressed file.
That makes so much sense.
If a scientific law is simple, elegant, and explains a massive amount of complex stuff with just a few variables, that mathematical beauty is a huge flashing neon sign that you have actually touched the truth.
So let's take a step back and look at what we've built here. We have established the beliefs that the universe is a solvable puzzle running on hidden code.
Check.
We have established the daily grind, the rigorous, sometimes painful cycle of observing, doubting, and testing variables without exception.
Needles and eyes and all.
Right. And we have established the pillars: evidence over authority, universal consistency, and seeking simple, beautiful, mathematical truth. So what does this all mean? What is the ultimate payoff for subjecting yourself to this intense framework?
It leads to the pinnacle of this worldview. The big idea. Discovering the laws of nature.
Which is really the ultimate superpower.
It really is.
Because living in the world of Isaac Newton isn't just about reading textbooks or doing homework to pass a test. It's not just writing down facts in a ledger.
No, not at all.
Finding the rules isn't the end of the story. It is the beginning of everything else.
This raises an important question, though, about human capability. Look at the progression this framework gives us. It draws a direct, unbreakable line.
From observing to creating.
Exactly. It states, the more we understand, the more we can predict. The more we can predict, the more we can create.
That flips the script completely. We aren't just like passive observers taking notes in the background of the universe.
Right. We're figuring out the mechanics so we can hijack the system and build our own tools.
You cannot build a functioning airplane if you don't first understand the immutable rules of air pressure and gravity.
No, it would just crash.
And you can't invent a smartphone or the internet if you don't first decipher the rules of electromagnetism and energy transmission.
Exactly. You cannot create without predicting, and you cannot predict without understanding the simple rules hiding behind complex phenomena.
So finding the rules is the key to everything.
The people operating in this world aren't just cataloging nature, they are the architects of the modern world. By submitting themselves to the rules of reality, by being humble enough to ruthlessly doubt their own conclusions and rely only on hard evidence, they actually unlock the ability to transform reality.
They learn the rules of the video game so they can start coding their own levels.
That is the perfect way to frame it. The Industrial Revolution, the space age, the digital age, none of that happens without first adopting this specific mindset.
What an incredible journey. We started with a universe that looked like total chaos, just flashing lights, plagues, and random events.
Pure chaos.
But by stepping into the world of Isaac Newton, we learned to look for the hidden code. We learned the operational mantra: curiosity, reason, proof, repeat.
Which is such a powerful tool.
We learned that a kid with evidence beats a king with an opinion every single time, and that the simplest, most beautifully compressed answer is usually the right one.
It is an incredibly powerful, demanding way to interact with the world.
It really is. And so I want to issue a challenge to you, the listener. Tomorrow, or even right now as you go about your day, try looking at your own environment through this Newtonian lens.
I love this.
Don't just let things happen around you passively. Look for the hidden rules. Watch the perfect parabolic arc of a thrown baseball, or, notice the specific way water spirals down the drain in your sink.
Or examine how a plant on your desk is slowly leaning toward the window.
Right. Remind yourself that none of it is random. There is a mechanical cause. There is a rule, and you have the cognitive tools to discover it.
And as you start looking for those hidden rules in your own life, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Building right off that ultimate big idea.
Lay it on us.
This worldview tells us that the more we can predict, the more we can create. It is a straight causal line. So if the universe truly follows discoverable rules, and we never ever stop observing, testing, and refining our knowledge, is there an ultimate limit to what humanity can eventually create? Or is our ability to build the future only limited by our patience to look for the patterns?
Oh, wow. That is a question that will definitely keep me up at night. What a phenomenal deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration into the world of Isaac Newton.
Thank you for listening. Keep observing, keep questioning your own conclusions, and we will see you next time.